When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
What I've been saying, right, about being a leader in the community when people are very desperate for food was pretty much shown in Portland last week or the week before with this headline that I have for you from Zero Hedge. America 2021, cops block hungry Portlanders scrambling for discarded food. Like I mentioned, that's from Zero Hedge. A northeastern Portland Fred Meyer hypermarket threw out thousands of perishable items on Tuesday because it suffered power loss due to a winter storm. Images of food quickly spread on social media as working port folks stormed the dumpster. Shortly after, a store manager called the cops, which prevented hungry people from taking the free food. Working poor Portlanders stormed the massive dumpsters on Tuesday for hopes of free food. They found a mountain of cheese and meats and juice and all sorts of food snacks, all food stacked to the brim of the dumpster. All right, so that to me is very, very unfortunate because people should not be that hungry, or they should not see the opportunity that they see on the dumpster and just die for it. All right, that is something that is only seen in third world countries. And quite frankly, Portland, of all places, has become a third world country, and the United States is headed to that direction. You know, those are the things that you see in my country. You see people in Mexico dumpster diving for food that's already spoiled for them to eat it. And there's a lot of safety systems, or, a lot of safety nets in this country that should not happen. So I'm not condemning the people of Portland, but that should be a red flag indicator for you. Do not fall into the same trap. Do not, don't do nothing to where later on it's going to cost you everything. Don't put yourself and your family and your kids in a position to where you're going to have to go dumpster diving for food. You can take the steps right now for you to have everything you need in order for you to prepare it. Now, I'm going to be talking about the kind of chickens that I have in my house, because I really do think that everyone in this podcast listening to this should start having their own chickens, their own livestock at home, because there's several things that you learn only by experiencing it, not so much for reading about it or listening to it about it. So what I'm gonna do is right now I'm gonna go get my, the chickens that I have, and I'm gonna kind of do like a show and tell, bringing them one by one. Originally, when I did this podcast last week, I had pictures, but I decided to bring in the live chicken in here because I have to talk about each individual one. All right. So this is where this is going to be edited. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back with my show and tell. Okay, the first hen or the first chicken that I have for you, to show you, is the Plymouth Rock. And this one, even though it hasn't put out any eggs, it has a really good environment. My chicken's free range because a lot healthier for them to free range than trying to, try just to keep them caged and stuff like that. They can roam around, they can get the insects and the worms and stuff like that. But when this chicken, if it doesn't put eggs by this coming summer or spring and summer, when I get more chicks to put into my coop, then I'm gonna have to process it. And this is the one that's gonna feed my family. All right. So these ones are pretty good. All right. I had another two of them, but they were killed by hawks. It's another thing that you have to make sure that you take care of when you're taking care of your chickens. But like I said, you learn by experience, more than what I can tell you here. And what you can read in a book, when you actually raise them, that's when you learn different things. And so yeah, this is the first one. Now, I'm gonna put her down. This one is my champion egg layer, egg layer. Easy there. Woo! Wait, let me get that. There you go. Woo! All right, so again, this one is my champion egg layer. This one has 3 sisters, or 2 more sisters, and they're the ones that lay my eggs the most. All right, and so this breed is in my experience, right? All this is my experience, In my experience, this one is the best one. They don't get sick very often. They eat pretty good. They like to free range a lot, and the eggs are very, very healthy. And the eggs are large eggs, and sometimes they get double yolk in them. You know, it depends on, I guess, how she feels. But when spring comes around and I get more chicks, I'm gonna get this breed because this one has proven to be the one that that lays the most eggs. Okay, so when I get more chickens, this is gonna stay. All right, this one is about a year old almost because I did get them in middle of March. So a year old, doing a great job laying eggs, and when more chicks comes around, this one's gonna be taking the lead. All right, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get the other two breeds that I have. All right, so the next one in the lineup here, this is the Leghorn chicken. Okay, now these are very good at laying eggs. This one and the brown one are the best one, but the brown one is better than they are. Okay, I had more of them and they lay less eggs than the three of those chickens combined. So the red ones are my number one choice when it comes to the breeds. Now this one lays eggs, and the rooster, the male of these, it does really good job at fertilizing the eggs, if you know what I mean. So if you want to get this breed, just know that the meat is not that big. You know, they're very small compared to the other breed that I'm about to show you. But the eggs are really good. They're also very nutritious. They're really good eggs, and they're a good size egg as well. You know, they're also large, but more like medium to large. More medium than large most of the time. So this is the other breed that I have now. I want to remind you that I got them last summer, so all of these are about a year old. Okay, and the reason that I did it this way is because I wanted to experiment rather with all the breeds to see which one was the best. Now what I've done this year is that I've identified which ones I'm gonna get. So it's gonna be the brown, and it's gonna be the next one that I'm gonna show you, because the next one is gonna be my meat chicken. And the brown ones and the rest of these, they're gonna stay alive. But when I get more chickens, they're gonna be the brown ones, and they're gonna be my egg chickens. All right, so I'm about to get the other one. I'll be right back. All right, so here's the last breed that I have, and you're gonna see why. These are my meat chickens. All right, just look how massive they are. And this one is the male, as you can tell, right, by the crest and everything. Or this is the rooster. And the breed is called Breeze. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not 100% sure. Let me open my laptop back up again. And these are the ones that I'm gonna use for my meat to feed my alliance. And the female version of them, they don't do very good laying eggs, not at all. I haven't had very many coming from them, and even though they do, you know, get on top of the chick or the hens to fertilize the eggs, there's a danger that comes with this one. So this is my experience with this breed. All right, as you can tell, the male is massive, right? He is really freaking huge. But with its talons, what they have done is that they have actually sliced open the females, and I had to put two down because I did not realize that this one had done that, and it sliced the flesh open. It got infected, and you know, I had to put it out of its misery. So in the future, what I'm gonna do is that when I look, or when I get more of this breed, if they don't start reproducing properly, and I have to get more, if I get any males in the litter, or I think that's the right term, when I get more males, those are the ones that I'm gonna process earlier on before they get this big, and they're gonna go in the freezer. Because the females get about this big, you know, just a little bit smaller, but they're really good for meat. We processed one of these when we needed one, and just out of the breast put you there. Just out of the breast alone, it fed 6 people, no problem, and we still had, chicken left over. So it's really beneficial for you to have your own chickens at home. It's not expensive at all. All right, a bag of feed, which is mainly corn, because I let them free range and they get plenty of other stuff in the field. It costs $9.99 at the Tractor Supply store. $9.99, and it's 50 pounds. So I buy 300 pounds at a time, and those 300 pounds will last me a month, maybe 2 if I do it right. And that's pennies a day to feed the chickens. For one, at the store, a chicken that size, when you get it at the store, it's gonna be like $20, or probably more. And the free range brown eggs will cost you about $8 at Walmart. So you get the quality of the meat, you get the quality of the eggs for a very small fraction of the price. So it's very beneficial for you to have chickens. It makes sense economically. You just have to have the space, and you have to have the infrastructure in place for you to be able to do that. All right. So that's one of the big things that I teach you here in this podcast. That even if you don't get the chickens right now, even if you only want them when crap hits the fan, you're gonna have to make sure that you have everything for them in place, because you're gonna need the place where they eat from, the where they drink the water. You're gonna have the chicken coop in place. So there's a lot of things that you have to buy for them in order for them to be, okay, for them to have a good environment to live. And again, my chickens, they have a great life. They just walk around, they peck around, they drink whatever they want, they eat whatever they want, and they go up back into the chicken coop when it gets dark. They go in there on their own. Right now we have to chase them because I came and shown them to you. But my point is that I'm going to get more. And, they lay eggs every single day, or the brown ones and the white ones do. The Plymouth hasn't really given me any. So I'm going to let her live for now. If my chicken coop gets full from all the other chickens, then that's going to be the first one in line to be processed. But that is what what I want you to take away from this is that there's 2 breeds that I'm going with. One, the brown one, because it gets me plenty of eggs, really good eggs. And the white one, I think it's Breeze. It's spelled B-R-E-S-S-E. And the breeds are going to be my meat chickens. So when crap hits the fan and I need to feed my alliance, or I need to feed my family, or I need to feed the community, and I have to process chickens, it's going to be the Breeze. All right? I'll be right back. I got to go put them back, or I should let them out. Be right back. All right, so I'm back. Had to chase them out. They had the door open. They couldn't find the way out. Anyways. All right. I want to go ahead and move on to communications. The communication part of all of this is actually really simple with the headlines, because the headlines pretty much give away the entire story, right? Because it's not difficult to understand that the power went out. And because the power went out, the cell phone towers couldn't do their job, and therefore nobody had any cell phone coverage. I'm going to give you both headlines back to back, because like I mentioned, they give all the story away. And the first one is from kvue.com, and it says, Texas reports widespread internet cellular outages. The second one is from abc13.com, and it says, phone companies give update on weekend service amid winter storm. And what I teach you here in communications is that you're going to have at least a walkie-talkies for people in your alliance to do, perimeter checks. And if you're walking around doing perimeter checks, they're going to have to contact, everybody inside the house. That way they know if there's any problem, if they see a group of people coming down the street, if they hear a vehicle, whatever the case may be. They're going to have walkie-talkies to be able to talk. Now, the next thing would be the ham radio. I want to remind you that you're going to have to get a license in order for you to operate a ham radio legally. But, once crap hits the fan, then that might not be a big issue. The thing about it is that you're going to need it for 2 reasons. For one, to communicate with, other members in your prepper community, or other people in your alliance. And not only that, for you to get information outside of the United States, if anything at all is going inside the United States. Because, let's say that we have an EMP and your and you had safeguarded your ham radio so it would work after an EMP happened, you would not know what's going on because, you may be, let's say, Nebraska, and there was an EMP, but then it was followed by a nuke, right? You would probably not see that in Nebraska. But if you had a ham radio where you could communicate with someone outside the United States, for example, Australia, maybe Canada, if they were not affected by the EMP, they can let you know what is being reported in their country about what's going on in the United States. That's one of the main reasons why you want a ham radio, all right? And communications will make you a very important member of the community because, of course, you're already giving them food, you're helping them out, but understanding what's going on outside of the U.S. is going to be a big plus because you will become the center of information, all right? So please understand that even if you have it and you don't let anybody know right now, you could be a great asset later on for the community because, you can save plenty of lives. All right, so the next big one or the next one that I want to talk about that is really important is energy. Because what happened in Texas, it really shows different things. And another thing that it proves is what I've been teaching you. That you're going to have your own system in order for you to have power at home whenever the lights are out, because of an EMP, a cyber attack, or just simply because something like it happened in Texas happened. The main thing that I show you here is that you need to have solar panels. Yes, I know that solar panels and wind turbines were frozen and they didn't work very well, but your system should always be charged at home. And if it's charged all the time, even when the sun is not there and everything freezes, your batteries are going to be fully charged, and then you can use whatever it is that you need off of that. All right, and hopefully something like happened in Texas happened for several days. Hopefully whatever batteries you may have or whatever generator you may have may last you that long. Now that's solar and wind. You can also get gas. The thing about gas, the reason that I don't like gas or propane is because if we find ourselves in a hyperinflation mode and a winter storm comes like this, it's going to be too expensive for you to get gas. Now, not to mention, it's probably going to be very, very scarce. So now you're at the mercy of being able to find propane or gas in order for your system to work. So that is the reason why I'm not a big fan of a gas generator. Not only that, but there's also the fire hazard. Because in the past, we have had reports of people burning their houses down because, their generator caught fire. I remember one of those stories coming out of, I think it was the hurricane season last year. No, not last year, the year before, 2019. I think it was Irma. Anyways, the point is that it did happen. And that is one of the risks that you don't have with solar panels. So you really have to make up your mind on which one you want to get, but I recommend the solar system. Now, I have a headline for you here from what happened in Texas, and of course you already know, but I want to talk about this because I'm going to be pointing out several things that a lot of people are not talking about it that I have not heard anybody point out. So this article comes from Zero Hedge, and it says Texas was seconds and minutes from complete disaster. 1 week ago, long before almost anyone else realized just how serious the situation in the Plains states in general and Texas in particular would be as a result of the cascade of soaring nat gas prices, we warned that all hell was about to break loose. But not even we had any idea just how close to total collapse the system nearly was. On Thursday, ERCOT officials said that the Texas power grid was, quote, seconds and minutes, end quote, away from a catastrophic failure that would have left Texans in the dark for months. They should know ERCOT is the entity that operates the power grid that covers most of the state. So by manually shutting down entire parts of the grid, ERCOT avoided the worst case scenario, one where demand for power overwhelms the supply of power generation available on the grid, causing equipment to catch fire, substations to blow, and power lines to go down. If the power grid had gone totally offline, the physical damage to power infrastructure from overwhelming the grid would take months to repair. All right, so that is the key issue right there. It would have taken months to repair. Now, we really have to ask our questions. Why would it take months? The main reason is that it's, complicated infrastructure, but the most important part of this is that all these parts come from China. All right, I have told you here in the past, other preppers have warned in the past, news networks have warned in the past, that all of this grid things that we need comes from China. And if we're at war with China and they take out our grid, do you really think that they're going to be sending us parts? No. All right. Just on a regular day, if the entire grid was to go down, it would take more than 18 months for the grid to come back up. And that's more than likely only in the major cities. Because what happened in Puerto Rico a few years ago, when I think it was Hurricane Irma came through and totally obliterated the island, is that the major cities in Puerto Rico got power first, and then the more rural areas were the ones that were without power for several months. I think up to a year. So that is the reason why you have to make sure that you can live off grid for that long. Yes, the Texas thing would have been a big problem, but it really shows us just how important it is for you to be prepared and how easily the system can go down. The grid is just dominoes ready to fall and fall in sequence and create a chain of events that we've never ever experienced in this country. All right, so now the biggest problem that has come out of Texas is that the power grid is, or the power company is charging people a lot of money. And what I want to point out is, even if they did repair the grid, if the bill is so expensive that there's no way that they're going to provide you with any electricity, then the power grid might as well have gone down, because at least for you, you don't have any power. And I don't know how long it's going to take you to pay, like in this person's case, $17,000. I mean, for me, that would be very devastating blow. And that is something that I learned from this. Even if in the future something like this happens in Alabama, to where I still have power, but people down the street don't, I'm going to be turning off my entire breaker box. That way I don't get that type of bills if something like that was to happen where I live. So that is one of the things I learned from this. Now, I want to show you a video, and I really need you to pay attention, because if they have this type of, I guess, program where you live, where the rate is fixed, it sounds like it would be beneficial for you to get something like that. Now, I didn't know about fixed rates, and as far as I know where I live, there's no such thing, but I'll look more into it. But in Texas, if something like this was to happen again, then people are good. So if you do that for the future, you might be good. All right, so let's go ahead and watch this video.
All right, we're moving on from the Texas power outage to the Texas power outrage. Electricity supply, the orange line, and demand, the green line, has finally stabilized. But boy, wholesale prices for electricity in Texas got really nuts over the past several days. At one point, 1 megawatt went from $50 to about $9,000. Now, that doesn't affect you, the retail customer, as long as you're on a fixed rate plan, which most people are. But if you're on one of these variable or indexed plans, your rate and therefore your bill can shoot straight up. In fact, one woman messaged us and said, "Mine is over $1,000, not sure how. 700 square foot apartment. I've been keeping it 60 degrees. Another couple tweeted at us saying, using as little as possible, 1,300 square foot house, and this is my bill. I only paid $1,200 for the whole year in 2020. They're at $3,801 now." Then I spoke with a guy named Ty Williams. He has 3 different meters, one for his home, one for his guest house, one for his office. Last month combined, he spent $660. Now the totals for each one of these is more than $5,000 in this snapshot. At this point, his electric bill for this month is more than $17,000.
How in the world can anyone pay that? You go from a couple $100s a month There's absolutely no way. It makes no sense.
Ty is with a company called Gritty, which made news earlier this week when they suggested that their members switch to a fixed rate plan with another provider. Not so easy though, says Ty, because no other providers would take him until February the 26th. And so
pretty much, you're being held hostage and you can't do anything about it.
Okay, some good news. Ty says Reliant Energy has now agreed to take him on and switch him over as of Friday. What about that bill he owes to Gritty, though? What about all of those bills that so many Texans are going to be owing to their electric providers? We're talking about huge bills here. All of that is still going to have to be sorted out. I'd like to know what your bill is. Don't send any identifying info or your account number or anything like that, but I've tweeted and Facebooked about this story, and I'd like you to add yours onto there. I am at Jason Wheeler TV on both of those platforms.
And Gritty, the electric company we referenced in the story there, sent us a long response. It doesn't say that customers won't be responsible for inflated bills, but directs a lot of criticism at the state. In part, the company says, we intend to fight this for and alongside our customers and equity for equity and accountability to reveal why such price increases were allowed to happen as millions of Texans went without power. More to come.
So hopefully you learn from that experience that these people had, because probably in Texas they're not going to take care of it. Hopefully they do. I mean, this is ridiculous. Hopefully the state will do something about it. I think I read something about them going into bankruptcy. But the point is that is a bill that is probably going to affect a lot of people's credit. So I guess we'll see how that turns out. If there's any more reporting on it, I'll make sure to bring it along. But now let's move on to the next thing, which is clothing. As the Texan people found out, clothing is very, very important. Because even if they do not expect some weather to be like that, or now they will, having clothing that is going to protect you in this extreme weather is always going to be a good idea, even if you don't need it, right? Let's say this is the one time in a lifetime and you buy good quality clothing that's going to be good for the winter and you don't ever use it, then, it's just an expense that could save your life, like it could have saved a lot of people in Texas. But it's not that difficult to prepare with clothing, because there's only two extremes, either really, really hot or really, really cold. If it gets really, really hot, you can only get so naked before they call the police. But you can still, take clothes off and try to cool down with the pool, with the river, with a cold drink, with the AC being on, whatever. You just been under the shade of a tree. There's different ways. But when it gets really, really cold, then that's when you need all this clothing. So in a tub, right? In one of those storage tubs, that's where you can put clothing for each individual member of the alliance. That's why I put it on there as a category. So if there is one family member that is going to be taking care of that, they're the ones who are going to have the ability to store that into containers and save it for each individual person of the alliance. Remember that you're going to have good quality boots, right? The ones that you can hike with, because if you have to leave your property on foot, you want to make sure that you have the proper shoes on so you don't get blisters, they don't get wet, stuff like that. You have to make sure it's good quality shoes. Then your socks. With wool socks in the winter, the biggest problem is friction, because your foot starts to sweat and then you start getting blisters, and then you get a blister big enough or several of them to where you just cannot move your feet and you have to wait for your feet to heal. There's several things you can do with that. They have powders that they sell at the store that will take care of the moisture. Or you can have a regular sock on and then the wool socks on top of that. It has proven to me, because I work outside, or I used to landscape, and I used to have those socks. My feet would sweat, I would get the blisters. But what I did is that I would put a regular sock on, the ones that you wear every day when it's not cold, and a cotton sock, and that would suck up the moisture and really make it to where it wasn't having friction and I didn't get blisters. That's how I took care of that problem for me. Hopefully that works for you too. But the point is that there's several things that you can do. The next thing is to have underpants or undergarments. People know them as the long johns. The same thing for the top. That's the type of clothing that you want under, because remember, for cold weather, you want to get dressed in layers. Because if having one big jacket is not going to have the same effect as having several layers of good quality fabric that is going to keep you very warm. Right? So the first layer would be the undergarments, the Under Armour, the long johns, the socks, the boots. Then on top of that would be, either regular pants, or you can have pajamas on and then regular pants. The pajamas would be the fleece kind. That's what I used to do when I worked outside in the cold. And then from there you can move on to the top, which can be, the Under Armour, a regular shirt or a long sleeve shirt, and then your sweater on top, then a hoodie or a jacket, and then the bigger jacket. And then from there you have the mask, the one that covers your head and your neck, because you really don't know how much warmth you lose through your neck until you work in a forklift outside in 20-degree weather. You really want something like that to cover your neck and your head and your face too, because you'll get a windburn if you don't cover properly. All right, and then finally the next thing would be to have a toboggan on, the really warm kind, the one that have the lining, the fleece lining in it. Those are the warm ones. And not last but not least, your gloves. The gloves have to be good quality, because if you get the cheaper ones, they can still let the water and the air through, and it's not going to keep you warm. Again, I've had that experience, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to clothing, because I work outside, forklift, landscaping, doing several things that taught me to stay warm in cold weather. And again, you have the two extremes. Get prepared for the cold more than you were with the hot, because again, you can only get so naked before they call the police on you. And lastly is the bug allocation, which is pretty much everything that I've been talking about this entire time. This podcast has gone for an hour and 41 minutes already before I even edit the, me going to chase down the chickens and everything else, videos. So you already know this is going to be split into two parts. But the last part is bug allocation, which again is what I've been talking about this entire time. You're going to have everything in place in your bug allocation or your bugging location. Maybe your house is your last, is your place where you're going to make your last stand, and that's where you die, right? Well, then you have to make sure you have everything in place there. And in all the categories is exactly what you can do at home, and you're going to be well prepared for anything to happen. EMP, you're prepared. Cold weather out of nowhere, you're prepared. Tornadoes, you're prepared. Asteroids coming from heaven, you'll be prepared. All right, so remember, you're going to have food, water of every kind, and by that I mean, stored water catchment system if it's legal, and a body of water running through your property all the time. Remember to get a wood burning stove or a fireplace so you can keep your house warm and you can use it for cooking. And remember, no gas or propane, because in the crisis defense scenario with hyperinflation, it's going to be too expensive, or even if, it's an EMP and society falls apart, there's no way you're going to replenish that. And you can get the solar energy. And actually, I want to show you that in the ManMadeSurvival store, I actually sell the EMP kit. And that EMP kit is going to help you in a power outage as well, because it has everything that you need in order for you to have light when everybody else doesn't. All right, so the first picture you're seeing is the Faraday cage bag. And it's a duffel bag, and it helps against EMPs. It shields against EMPs. So any electronic that you put in it, it's going to be safe, according to this company. The next picture on the store is this this Yeti 200X. And you have to understand that the size of your solar generator is what you intend to use with it. Because Gold Zero, they do have the home system kits, okay? They will power 4 outlets and it'll be like you have the power grid at home. Of course, they're batteries, so they're eventually going to run out, but you have to really look at what you want to power. The two main appliances at home, the ones that are really important because everything else is just luxury, is your refrigerator and your stove. And the stove, because nowadays most of everybody has electrical stove. So those are the two main ones that you really need to power. One is to keep your refrigerator working and your food, preserved, and the other one so you can cook and you can eat. Without those two, then you're really going to have a hard time. You have to prepare for that. But the size of the generator that you have to make sure that it is actually going to withstand what you need it for. And, I know American families want to have the grid working, or at least the electricity working all the time, whether it's off grid or on grid. But you really have to be, I would say, realistic and see what you need to power the most. Now, in this kit, it has this generator because of what is powering within the kit. All right, it comes with a solar panel, and also it comes with this little LED camping lantern, which is of course rechargeable, and that's exactly what you want. The reason that I put this one in this kit is because it has its own USB cable where you would just plug into the solar generator and charge it. And this one is pretty bright. It will light up very good in your living room, and it'll give you enough light to see in the dark. So that's the reason why that's in it. The next one that I want to show you is the candles. All right, so these are 115-hour candles, and if you're using them just when it gets dark, let's say between 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock when you go to bed, these little candles are going to last you forever. So that is the reason why I have it on the kit. The next thing that I want to show you is the flashlight. This is my favorite flashlight. This is the personal one that I use, the MT21C. The battery is excellent. This type of battery, you can charge it directly to the USB cable. You don't really need one of those little boxes. You can get one if you want to, but the good thing about this battery, for one, is rechargeable, and two, the charging port is on the battery itself. So that's great. And I like this flashlight because it's very bright. It fits good in my hand, and it has the 90-degree head, which, of course, that will give you hands-free if you need to point it at anything while you're working on something. And the bottom is magnetic. So that is one of the reasons why I really like it. And finally, the walkie-talkies. So again, you can communicate with your alliance. If they're doing a perimeter check and stuff like that, you want those. Those are going to be critical in those days. All right, so hopefully this entire podcast was very beneficial to your understanding on why I teach the things that I teach, the way that I teach it. Because when you compare it to other podcasts, right, and I'm not naming anybody in particular, it's just a generalization. Most of the time, what I've noticed throughout the years, before I even started doing this podcast, is that they only complain about the issue. They don't really give you any solutions. They don't really tell you what to expect, what to buy, what to produce, stuff like that. They just tell you, a laundry list of things that you need to buy, and it's mainly focused on one issue. One of my experiences with people, because, I've talked to people about preparedness in the past, is that they only focus on one thing. There's people who only focus on food. Food, that's it. They forget about water and everything else. There's people who focus a lot on guns, all right? They only have guns and ammo, and that's it. They don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have communications, anything. Because they do believe that if something wants to happen, they will go into the woods, kill something, and drag it back home. The only issue with that is it's going to be them and their mother, or everybody else and their mother doing the same thing. And when people start fighting over carcasses that they want, that's when we're going to have a lot of deaths out in the woods. So that is the reason why I teach preparedness this way, because once you do it the way that I teach it, to where you have all these categories taken care of, then you're going to be well-rounded in your preparedness. You're going to have all the bases covered and beyond, because the core of all the disaster, it doesn't matter what it is that you're going to need food, water, the electrical grid, and medicine. If you don't have it, if you don't have those, then that's when you find yourself in a bad situation. That's exactly what I experienced in Mexico. That's what other people experience in other places. All right. I had a teacher when I was in high school, a long time ago now, who went on vacation with his pregnant wife to Peru. And very sadly, the baby passed away because the conditions of the hospitals in Peru were very poor, and they were not able to deliver the baby safely and keep it alive. So that is the reason why I really do believe in the modern medical system, because it has saved many of my family members' life, and actually is keeping my dad alive. Yes, I do understand the pharmaceuticals want to make money, and they make money by keeping people sick. I get all of that. But you cannot beat modern medicine with what you can do in your own backyard, right? Or what you can do in your own living room. I don't promote, making your own medicine on a regular basis for everyday living. That's the skill that you should have when there's no more hospitals. Let's say that the United States does go through hyperinflation and we live like a third world country for 10 years. That's when you're gonna need the knowledge for all this medicine. But while the grid is still working and you're able to buy insurance, you should always seek a doctor, in the hospital, because they are going to do their job to keep you alive. So that's my 2 cents on the whole medical thing. But hopefully all of this was beneficial to you. Hopefully you learned a lot. I gave you my show and tell and my experience with chickens. The same thing I'm going to be doing with rabbits. And we're thinking about getting sheep over goats. The reason being is because sheep milk is more healthier than goat, because goats have more cholesterol in it and sheep doesn't have as much. So it's, healthier for you in the long run, but also the meat is more tender. And even though, this really good goat meat that we eat, in Mexico is called barbacoa, that is the best food you can ever eat. But, if we can pick one of the two, we're gonna start with sheep, and then I'll raise it. I'll let you know how it goes, and we'll see how it turns out. All right. So again, I want to remind you about the store, ManMadeSurvivalStore.com. Please help us by making a contribution, by buying something on there, and if you cannot help us monetarily, financially, just do it by sharing this podcast with friends and family. All throughout all your social media, whatever it might be. Just the simple fact of leaving comments and having a conversation with someone else in the comment section will help me. Just clicking the subscribe button will help me. It's not something that you're not paying for. It's absolutely free, but will help me in the long run. So I would really appreciate if you could do that, because as you know, all this information is free. All this information is very detailed. And if we all prepare in the same way, we're all going to reach the same goal, and we're going to be prepared better than most people out there, including preppers. All right. So again, my name is Jose Prado, and remember, always ready.
We're now in the grips of an inflation scare that has put a chokehold on the growth stocks, and it's been a nightmare for tech. This morning, it felt like we'd have still yet another ugly session for tech. Then we got this reprieve when interest rates took a breather for an ugly close, with the Dow ultimately finishing down 470 points. S&P declining 0.48%. NASDAQ did manage to rebound 0.56%, and that is important. See, not everything can rally. When rates tumble, like today, the big industrials lose their momentum, hence the decline in the Dow. But at least the cloud, the semis, the cybersecurity stocks could climb out of the hole that they're in and lead the NASDAQ into a rare patch of green. In other words, we rolled back the reflation trade for another day. However, after a crazy year full of unprecedented action, we're finally dealing with something normal here. I've gone over the last half dozen of these inflation scares, and I think the closest analog is the one we got from December 2015 through February 2016. Back then, the economy was heating up. Our economy is heating up. Our previous Fed chief, now Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, let us know that it was time. The economy was too strong. It had to raise rates. Had to raise the federal funds rate. Then as now, the most highly valued stocks, the ones that trade on their sales, not on their earnings, got absolutely annihilated for weeks on end. Emphasis on weeks. And remember, we're only in like week 2. Of course, there's a big difference. Our current Fed chief, Jay Powell, has decided to upend more than 40 years of monetary policy. Ever since the late 70s, the Fed has been ruthless about crushing inflation, even if they have to cause the occasional recession in the process. But Jay Powell believes we're underestimating the risks of high unemployment and overestimating the risks of inflation. That was true even before the pandemic, and it's doubly true now. To a lot of people on Wall Street, though, that's just heresy. They don't trust the man. See, you got bond sellers all over the place betting that Powell will have to change his mind because the economy is going to get strong. As they see it, we're about to get a huge stimulus package that will hit right as America reopens for business because of the vaccines. So they think the economy must overheat. Therefore, we must have inflation, serious inflation. And inflation is a nightmare for people who own bonds. I mean, who wants a piece of paper that pays 1.5% when inflation could break 2%? You're losing every day. And that's why these people have been dumping bonds, and their wholesale selling always smashes the stock market. Remember, stocks are valued based on their future earning streams, and inflation erodes the value of these future earnings.
The Man-Made Survival Show.